Hello, everyone, and welcome to our continuing series of classes from the Sandy Granite Family History Center. Tonight, we have a bone-rattling treat for you. I just didn't get that. And we have Robin Fuhlenbach from up in Idaho in the outer reaches of the U.S. And she has put together tonight a wonderful title for us, which you can see there, Exhuming the Skeletons in Your Closet. And I understand that for a slight fee that she will send you a shovel, so you can begin that process if you'd like. But Robin is just a delight. We've known each other for a while. We first met, she was teaching, wasn't it up at the senior missionary thing up in Joseph Smith building?
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Salt Lake City headquarters mission.
Yeah. And a training zone, that's what the name of it was. She was a missionary up in the training zone up there, and she has done a lot of teaching, and she's currently a teacher trainer for the church missionary department. And Robin has been a frequent presenter for us here. And if you go on the Family History Center's website, granitefhc.com, and go into the schedule tab, you'll see the classes that have been done in months and years past. And Robin has a couple. So without further ado, we'll turn the time over to Robin. If you have questions, you can either put those in the chat, or you can hold them for the question and answer session at the conclusion of Robin's presentation. Thank you. Robin.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. All right. So I love this picture. I hope we don't have that many skeletons in our closets, but we never know. We never know. And what we're talking about tonight is uncovering those unsavory moments and characters in your family's past. And then we're going to choose what to do with that knowledge and why. So we have two objectives. Oh, where did my keyboard go? There it is. Put it away. Our two objectives are to discover where to find these black sheep records, and then we want to determine what to do with the information that we find. So this may seem like an odd class for family history enthusiasts, but if you haven't yet come across some sticky family issues in your searches, you will eventually. But why would you intentionally look for them? That's the question. Why do you want to look for those? Well, guess what? Black sheep leave lots of records. And those records are everywhere. So sometimes they lead to less damaging records. Sometimes they lead to more damaging records. But the point here is that once you've looked them up and found those bits of information, then you get to decide what to do with them. So this is a quote from James Tanner, and it's found in the Family History Guide blog. And if you want to look for that blog, there's the website down there, and it's Finding Your Ancestors Using Court Records. And if James were on here tonight, I'd make him read it, but he's not here. So this is what he said. Legal documents are located just about everywhere in almost every town in the world. The main challenge in doing research besides the language is the availability. Although the major genealogical websites have collections of legal documents, billions, note that number, billions of others are still on paper or microfilm in individual storage areas, from courthouses to warehouses. So billions more records are out there. And so we're going to talk about how to find some of those for criminals or the black sheep of our families. Okay, so let's look at some examples of sticky family issues that might yield some valuable information instead of just being an embarrassment. So here are some polygamous ancestors in prison. And I don't know if you recognize any of them in that picture, but I think the one right in the middle, sitting down, is George Q. Cannon. And these are guys in the Utah penitentiary for polygamy, for being polygamous. So if you had family who were in that situation, you might be able to find them in this book, Judicial Prosecution of Prisoners for LDS Plural Marriage, and the sentences, of course. And this, I found that book by going to a record search or a catalog search from Family Search. And it's a book, it's not filmed. So if I wanted to get to there, I'd have to go to the Family History Library or to the BYU Library. Notice it's a BYU publication. So that was my first thought when we were talking about skeletons in the closet, was this. I remembered this picture of these guys in their striped prison suits. I know that you don't usually see dignified prophets, seers, and revelators in striped prison suits. Okay, sometimes those sticky situations are startling DNA revelations. And so most of us are familiar with DNA and DNA searches. Most of us have had our DNA done. If you haven't, Ancestry is one of the ones that does it quite regularly. And then you get on the Ancestry site and you can click on this DNA and it will give you some options. So I chose Kent's DNA because he's been deceased for a while and I didn't think he'd care. But this is what comes up when you click on that DNA tab. You get a result summary, you get a DNA story, you get DNA matches. And if it's updated, it'll show you that there. There are the through lines and the traits and all that. But this is what you get if you go into the DNA matches updated. And this, notice that this says up here, beta. Can you see where my mouse is? That means that they're trying it out. And what they've done is they've separated the DNA matches into parent 1 and parent 2. And this parent 1 happens to be my husband's mother. And notice how many matches there are. Does that kind of overwhelm you? Some of those might be black sheep. We never know. I'm going to tell you a story about a man who came through the training zone, and he had a DNA profile that was a really interesting issue. He came through, he reported that he had always wondered why he wasn't built like his brothers and sisters. He was tall and thin, and his siblings were short and round. So then he did his DNA, and he discovered they were only his half siblings. Now, he could have responded to that news in many different ways. Shock, embarrassment, but what he chose to do was to rejoice, to find the answer to his riddle. And then he went about trying to find his other half siblings and his birth father. He had a wonderful experience, he said. He thoroughly enjoyed the search and the learning. And by the time he got around to doing this and had this discovery, his parents were dead. So it was just his brothers and sisters he had to deal with. And they were supportive as well. So it was really fun to talk to him about his journey discovering his other family. Okay, sometimes a sticky situation is made up by people who are making things public that shouldn't be. They are private things, they shouldn't be made public, and they have just decided to put something out there for the whole world to see. In other words, the family sins are shouted from the rooftops, or in this case, they were attached to Family Search memories. This house is the house of a family member in a small town in Utah, rural Utah. And a woman who grew up across the street from this house described it and what she observed while she was a child. Now, you know, children see things differently from adults, and she was an old lady when she wrote this down. So some of what she said was really not appropriate for sharing in Family Search, especially by someone who was not related to this family. She just was a neighbor. And her daughter just attached the unedited memories to the person pages of these people who are pictured in this on the front porch. And when I read the memoirs, I was kind of surprised, and I thought, oh, I don't really think my grandmother would like that known about her cousin and her family. And so I emailed the submitter and I asked her to edit out the hurtful parts. I told her that those kinds of memories do not need to be perpetuated, and she agreed and she edited it. And then she put the story back in, and the rest of it is really fun to read because it gives you some pictures of the people who lived there. And it wasn't, she took the shocking parts out. So I thought that was kind of fun. But, you know, sometimes people find those sticky situations and you want to think twice or three times or four times before you post something into memories that may or may not be inflammatory. Okay, this one makes me giggle because if you've ever talked to an Australian who's been an Australian from way back when they were first being settled in Australia, you might have some convicts in they might have some convicts and they think it's wonderful. An Australian who can trace his or her ancestors to one of those convicts is really quite proud of it. So even though the convicts were sent there, and sometimes they were sent to America, colonial America as well, they may be convicts that were transported from the British Isles for a variety of reasons. Some were petty and some were quite serious. So in the 17 and 1800s, the British government was struggling with these overcrowded jails and increased crime. And so their answer was, let's just put them on a ship and send them off to the colonies. And I don't know of any Americans who have the same pride in their ancestry as from convicts as the Australians do, but I think it's quite endearing. So you can actually find convict records online. And this happens to be one site. It's convictrecords.com.au for Australia. And then I did some searching and I searched for Eliza Fitzgerald. She may or may not be my ancestor. There are so many Fitzgeralds with that same name that it's hard to tell. But let's look and see what is in this record. First of all, there's her name, Eliza. And she doesn't have any aliases. She's female. She was born in 1812. So I probably have a record of her in my stuff someplace. She died on the 12th of August, 1901. So she lived a good long time, 89 years, which is a much longer lifespan than they expected from any of those convicts when they sent them that way. Some died within months after they reached there. If you'll notice, her conviction crime was theft. Now that could have been a theft of a loaf of bread. It could have been a theft of a silver candlestick. It doesn't say what it is, but she was being held at Middlesex Gaol. I'm just trying to think of what this delivery would be. Convicted at the delivery. I don't know. Anyway, she must have been sent there, and then that's where she received her sentence. You think that's what that means? But look at her sentence. It's a lifetime sentence for theft. So they sent her from England to Australia, thousands of miles away, for a theft. And she left on October 30th, 1834. So she was 22 years old. She arrived there, look how many months later, in March 1835. And she was sentenced to life. Now, that doesn't look like she's a really hardened criminal. She probably didn't think she was, but I found some more information about her later, and she married, had 7 children, and lived for 89 years in that colony of Australia. So that was, I think people could be proud of her, even if she was a thief. Okay. So what records are available online? Well, we've shown some examples of Family Search, Ancestry, Find My Past, and convict records. Those are some places to look. And if you go to Family Search or Ancestry and go to the card catalog, to get to that, remember, you look at the search button at the very top, hover over that, and then go down to the card catalog. Then you can choose any category that lists criminal or court records, and there are different ones. So you can just do that. And then you keep filtering down from that until you see databases that fit into whatever collections you want. You can filter by location, you can filter by names and dates, but not every database that comes up is for criminal records. So take time to review each stage you go through when you're filtering down, because you might find something that's not quite what you're looking for. You know, you have to kind of filter out what it is you want. And then there's a hint here. In the early West, if you're looking for criminal records in the early West, military forts served as courts and prisons for everybody, not just for military people. So don't dismiss them without looking. That's just a little side note hint. Okay, another way to search in Ancestry card catalog is to go to the search and then enter prison or prisoner in the search bar. And you can choose federal penitentiary records and enter a name, or sometimes there are images attached that give you more information. If the record happens to be from the National Archives, it's probably an index only. And if you want, if that is your person, you'll need to request the file from them. And you can sometimes get more information if you go to their website, archives.gov, and then, but you'll probably either physically have to go to one of their sites or request from them that a copy of that record. And it takes a while and there's a fee involved. When you find the record of a prisoner, remember, it is rarely, if it's in a federal penitentiary, it's rarely their first offense. So look for other records. Okay, now I'm going to give you some examples. I decided I wanted to look for another one of my Irish ancestors that probably got sent to Australia. So I went into Ancestry, and if you look up here, you can see what my filters were. I went to the search menu, then I looked for court, land, wills, and financial. And then from there, I went to court, governmental, and criminal records. And then I used another filter of Australia. And then a whole list of databases came up, and I chose South Australia, Australia prison records. And notice over here, there are 86,000 of them. So how do I get from there? Well, fortunately, they are indexed by name, and you go by last name. And I went to F for Fitzgerald, and I found several John Fitzgeralds, but this looked like an interesting person. His conviction date, if you look down here at the bottom, it's March 1900, and it has some information about him, what he looked like. He was married, he was pale, he had hazel eyes, and his hair was light brown. But also what was cool was it had this attached to it as well. And this is the prisoner's register from the convict department. So there's his name. He had no alias. It gives dates. And if you'll look down here, it's kind of hard to read, but it says he is an incorrigible rogue. So he wasn't a very popular prisoner. And if you look over here under previous convictions, my banner kind of covers some of it up, but you notice that it's very full. So he has been in a lot of trouble. But it does give some descriptions of him. It does say that he has a wife, he's married. And so that gives me some information that I could double check with my records to see if there's any connection between us. I think he looks quite presentable here. This says his ordinary appearance, and this one says his prison appearance. So they made him shave off his beard and changed his clothes, but he looks a little bit aged, more aged too. So those are some things you can find in the South Australia Prisoners Register. Okay, here's another example of what you might find. This is also from Ancestry. And I did the search, I did convict records, I found this record for Beck Lawrence. And actually Beck Lawrence was really Becky Clark. And here it shows some things about her, how tall she was, how old she was, how much she weighed, what she looked like. She was a farmer and a widow. And here it says number of children and residents of, and there's 5 children living with their grandmother. Her other relatives in the area are mother, a brother, and sister in Covington. So that's some good information. You know, you can find some more information about her from other things in there. And the date of her sentence was 1898. So you probably find some information about her family, where they lived. She was in the circuit court. And look at what her crime was. Felonious adultery. I don't know that they have very many states who have that as a felony anymore, but I thought it was interesting. Her term of her sentence was 2.5 years. So she had to stay the whole time. She'd go till May 24th, 1901. If she had the short time, then she went to December 9th, 1900. And then over here in her prison history, notice how empty that is. Doesn't have any of those other problems that John Fitzgerald had. And her date of discharge was the earlier day. So she must have been a pretty model prisoner. But that's some good genealogy information you can find about her from these records. Okay, another invaluable place to look is the Family History Guide. Well, of course, silly idea. And so what I did is I just went into the Family History Guide, and under the search thing, I entered court records. And I got a plethora of court records. Of course, this includes all of the court records. So it includes probate, it includes all kinds of different ones. Some of them are immigration courts, naturalizations, but you can go down here, and if you look, finding your ancestors using court records, this is the blog that I was talking about that we had James Tanner's quote from, and you've got civil law and criminal law, and some of our ancestors were in the criminal law spots. Also, you can go down and learn about court procedures, how they might work. There were pages of these different kinds of entries in the Family History Guide for court records. So you can get them by state, you can get them by country, and it's a really great spot to look for them. Okay, now, where else can I look online? Okay, here, turn to newspapers. They have more information about arrests, court cases, sentencings, etc., than you probably really want to know. And you can go to ancestry.com and newspapers.com. Those are 2 good sites, but remember, they both require paid subscriptions. And if you go to Ancestry with your free account, then you cannot, it'll index the newspaper articles, but you can't see them. You have to have a newspapers.com subscription, or you can't get into them. So in your searches there, you can focus on the locality, narrow by searching on different fields or keywords. You can search on a person's name in Ancestry. And remember that the indexing has been done by artificial intelligence. So the spelling may not be exact. So sometimes you have to look a little bit harder to find some different ways of doing your search. Okay, there are some other sources. You can check out the Library of Congress. This is the Chronicling America site, and it tells you all of the newspapers that were ever published in this country. And some of them have links to places where you can actually look at those and find out what years they were published and where the repository is. But that's a really interesting site. Also, state universities and press associations have repositories of newspapers from their particular state. So those are kind of good too. I know that Utah has, through the Utah Press Association, has published a repository that you can get online. Remember, they're indexed by artificial intelligence, by a computer, so they may not be exactly the right spelling. Okay, so let me share an example. This is from newspapers.com, and I wanted to find out more about my ancestor, Laura Marie Donaldson. So I decided to I was looking for an obituary. So I got online, I put her name in, and this is what the search page looks like. You've got, this is the main page. You go to the search. Can you see that? There's a keyword. Notice I put it in quotes because I wanted that to appear together. I didn't want a whole bunch of other ones. Also, I put in the date, a date range, and I put in Idaho because I knew she was in Idaho. So this is what I got. I started it found the article reporting her death from drowning. And I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't realize she had drowned. And so I read that. It was a horrible accident where she was pinned under her husband as the car turned over, and she drowned in this ditch. And he was out cold and came to a few hours later and realized that she was underneath him and dead. So that was a pretty grim end to her life. And I thought, well, I wonder how he fared after that. What happened to him? So I looked for him. I looked for her husband, Lindell L. Donaldson, and I found his obituary. And there he was. And he died of gunshot wounds. So I was quite startled about that. I wondered if he'd killed himself or what had happened. He was sad because he let his wife die. And so then I started looking in the newspaper articles that reported his murder and the subsequent trial and the fate of his murderer. So his murderer in this case was Arnold Fisk. And so I looked for his dates, 1960 to 1970 in Idaho. And this was the first article that I found. Now, I'm not real fond of the way the Idaho Statesman makes its headlines. This is an awkward headline. Gem County files sleigh case charge against the man in the Poor Boy mine death. So the mine was named the Poor Boy. These guys were miners. And it talks about how Arnold Fisk shot his partner, Lindell Donaldson, in the head, and then went and told the sheriff about it and got the sheriff to come, and had been drinking. So that was involved. Pretty sad, huh? Well, then they found him over for trial. And that was another article that I found. And then he has to get a lawyer appointed to him by the state because he doesn't have a lawyer. So it tells who his lawyer is. And then here's another article, says he was found guilty of second-degree murder. And he was supposed to be sentenced on Tuesday. And I didn't find the sentencing, but I did find that he had appealed that. And the second-degree murder conviction was affirmed by the Supreme Court. And then I noticed that he had applied for pardon. And this is the notice of publication for him applying for pardon. Now, did I put that any place? No, I haven't put this any place. I haven't added it to any sources or people. He's not, this Arnold Fisk isn't related to me. I did find his obituary, so he's been dead for quite a few years. So I don't think that I'm, doing anything that's embarrassing or illegal, but I don't know, by putting it in this thing. But I didn't put it in any family search site or any memories or anything like that. This is just what I found as an example of the newspaper sources. Okay, another place that's interesting, and this is kind of fun. I think Anne's on here. Anne and I have had a lot of fun looking in these petty sessions courts for our Irish ancestors, because there were some really strange and funny things that came up. Okay. These are interesting, usually not damaging information. And this is from the 1800s and the 1900s in Great Britain. And since my family came from Ireland, I searched Family Search for petty session court registers. So let's take a look at what I've got up here. You recognize this search engine. This is the Family Search top of the page. And what I did is I went to the main Family Search page. I clicked on search. This is what the drop-down menus were. I went to records. And then this comes up, this part right here, this find a collection. And it's down at the bottom left-hand side of the page. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to enter a collection title in here. And I'm just going to put in Ireland petty sessions courts. And if you notice what it says in this description here, it says, if you don't know the collection's exact title, start typing and we'll try to help you. So that's what I did. And that's what came up. Ireland petty sessions court registers and the dates. So of course I went to it. And these are some of the records that we found. Now this one happens to be petty session court registers 1818 to 1819. This is Donegal, Killybegs, and it's I searched for Michael Hamill. Well, Anne searched for Michael Hamill. And down here at the bottom is the record for Michael Hamill. All right, he is. And I enlarged it so you can see it here. And it Michael Hamill of Shalweg, he was the defendant. And on the 17th day of March, 1896, at Kilcar in said county, which is Donegal, was found drunk on the licensed premises of Mary Gallagher. And so he got fined for that. So most of the petty session court registers are things like being drunk, being disorderly, letting your cows go on the main street, not cleaning up the night soil that the cows or the animals left behind, not licensing your dog. And they're usually taken care of by JPs. But since these court cases that come before the petty sessions court are sometimes a little bit more serious than that, you might find everything from misdemeanors to manslaughter. So this is a one for Terence Donahoe, or Donahue, I don't know how they would say that, but on the 18th of March, 1859, he violently assaulted John Darby at Duke Street in Athy. And that's my family, you know, in Athy. So guess what? He got a sentence. If you look here, it says he is to be kept for the space of 3 years on penal servitude. Now, I don't know what that penal servitude means, but it sounds to me like he's going to be doing community works, hard labor for 3 years. He could have been sent to Australia. That was happening at the same time. So at least he got to stay home. Okay, here's another one. This one I happened to find in Find My Past. And so I went up to Find My Past. You can see up here, I just searched all the records for Lawrence Histon, born 1874 in Ireland. And I wanted to know where he came from because his son married into my family. So this is what I did. I looked for him. These are the results that I got. And the first one on there is from Ireland Petty Sessions Court. And this is in Carrick-on-Shannon in Leitrim. So I looked down here and I thought, okay, what is this record for him? It looks like he was working for the Midland Great Western Railway Company of Ireland, and he and George Boyd, both of Cortober in Roscommon, are accused of stealing 4 bags of flour with the price tag of £5. Now, notice that they've penciled in right here, larceny. Larceny is a pretty serious offense. That's more than just a theft. And so after this, the date of this court case is February 13th, 1903. After this case was presented, it was withdrawn and the proceedings were instituted by this information and given warrants. So the warrants were placed for their arrest. So I thought, oh, well, how was he arrested and put in jail for larceny and, and not transported to Australia or not put in jail? How did he get to the United States? And so I found this record, this document in Family Search, but I found the index in Find My Past. Okay, so the next thing is I looked at this record. It says British and Irish Roots Collection, Americas. Well, notice what this record is. This record I found in Ancestry, but it's a record of aliens held for special inquiry. And they arrived March 11th, 1903. So this is in New York Harbor. They got there. So February 13th, he was being arraigned in Petty Sessions Court. In March 11th, 1903, he was in the United States. So he did a runner and he came from Glasgow, Scotland. So he must have left immediately after that, before they could serve a warrant for his arrest. He made it to Glasgow and he got on the ship and he came to the United States. His wife went the other way. She went to Cork and came over with their son. So I thought that was an interesting little side story there. Okay, and that all came from a search in Petty Sessions Court. Okay, what are some offline sources? So where can you look if you can't find anything online? If you'll notice, I've got the front page or the cover of this book, the source book, and I know that there are a lot of people who are in the legal profession that have copies of this, maybe in the library, at your local library, maybe in the family history library. But what it is it's a comprehensive guide to county, state, and federal public record sources. And this happens to be the 11th edition. That was the most recent that I could find. But it will give you places to look for public records. Okay, another place, of course, is the National Archives, and we talked about that. It contains Bureau of Prisons records, and you can search the catalogs online, but remember, you have to access the records by either going there or requesting hard copies for a fee. Also, their county courthouse records, that's where some of these billions of records that James Tanner was talking about can be found. And they can be held either in the courthouse office, or sometimes they're transferred to a library or some kind of historical record repository. And those records I've gone to courthouses and looked for some of those records, and sometimes they don't even know where they are. But another place you can look, if you can't go to the places, the courthouses themselves, is to check on US Gen Web. And I'll show you the page for that in just a minute. There are states and county genealogists, and they will either contact the county to ask for where the records are held, or give you an opportunity. They'll go look for you. Sometimes they'll do lookups for you. And sometimes you can just contact the county clerk to ask where the records are located. But here's a little warning here. They're not in the market for being genealogists. They're there to keep track of the courts. And so, you know, your requests are kind of low on their priority list. Okay, another place like we just talked about was local newspapers, copies or microfilms, and they're often held by nearby libraries. And you can check the Library of Congress for the list of the newspapers. And if your library, if that library has a microfilm, you can sometimes get your library to do an interlibrary loan and get those microfilms to your library for a period of a few weeks. And then you can check them out on a microfilm reader at your library. And I've done this before. It's quite enlightening. Okay. What do you do with this information? Okay, you've found all this stuff. Some of it's damaging, some of it's amusing, some of it's got great information in it. Please remember ethical considerations. Is the person still living? Are the children of this person still living? Could this information hurt or embarrass them or their family? And when in doubt, ask. If you are not closely related to these people, I wouldn't be going there with it. If you don't feel like you're close enough relations to ask them when things are in doubt, then it's probably not a good idea to be posting that stuff anyplace. And if you don't think it's appropriate to attach the records to a person page, like in Ancestry or Family Search, you can keep those notes private. You can do that on Ancestry, but not on Family Search. But if you have your own separate family tree in your own site, like Legacy or Tree Maker or those, you can add notes to that family and they'll remain secure. So those are the ways that you can try to remember that those ethical considerations and people's feelings about things. Okay, here's the US Gen website, and it's free, always free. And this is you go usgenweb.org and then it comes up with, this is their main page. You can click on the state or click or select a state up here. You can, then it will bring up the state and you can choose a county. And then the county will show you different volunteers that are willing to help you find records and often do lookups. So this is a jewel of a site, and I don't know that very many people use it anymore, but it's great. And there are wonderful people there to help you. Okay, we're done. Are there any questions?
Oh, I haven't seen any. We played some little notes in there where people can find Robin some additional information on some of the things like how to use the Ancestry Index and some things like that.
Okay.
James Tanner's post and
Okay.
that kind of information. But I find this topic absolutely fascinating because I have found a couple of, let's just say, very interesting progenitors.
Skeletons in your closet, hey?
Yeah, some really interesting ones. And then, because, well, of course, I'm originally from Virginia and Robert E. Lee is in my line and a couple of other people. And it's just fascinating to go back, and especially when you hit the newspapers and a few other things, you know, and find out some of the stories that make these people just totally real. I also, I was trying to find out, but I'm not at where I can get logged on to our Family History Center, but newspapers.com might be free if you're in a Family History Center. If you're logging on from the Family History Center, just like Ancestry,
Okay.
newspaper.com might be free there.
I haven't ever been able to get them there. And you're on here. You do Ancestry. You do. Can you answer that question?
There. Okay, I had to unmute my mic. I've never gotten on. I have my own subscription to it, but I have not been able to get on through Family Search, through Ancestry on Family Search.
Okay.
So I agree.
There's when you get into the Family History Center, there's a thing called the Family History Portal.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about because we're both
Yeah.
at the Family History Centers. Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah, so you can try that.
you can try it.
you can try. If anybody has any luck, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't rank up there with the Granite Family History Center. We're just
Or
a little
maybe.
podunk Salmon Family History Center.
We're just little.
Really. Let me, and I put the web address for the Granite Family History Center up in the earlier in the chat, and you can go on there and reach us on there too. Robin, did you want to throw your email up there?
Okay. How do I throw my email up there? Oh, you want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. Oops. Got a V in there I don't need. Okay. That's my email.
Perfect. That looks familiar. Great.
Um,
Thank you again, Robin. Interesting as always. And
You're welcome.
let me know what you're dressed up as on Halloween.
On Halloween, a skeleton.
Skeleton or a gravedigger or whatever you were.
There we go, a grave digger.
Thank you all for attending tonight. And again, you can find this class at the Granite Family History website, www.granitefhc.com, and up on your schedules, and you'll see the archive classes there. So thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.